I got really into Jackpot Crash Course. That's why this video exists. That's the end of the introduction. Let's get started. And spoilers for every game I'm going to talk about. This game isn't bad, but it really feels like, yeah, this was their first game. You play as the nun Angelica as she helps with the pastor's funeral. A guardian angel named Forces will talk to you and tell you not to help anyone and mind your own business. Most of the games I'm going to be talking about today don't have much in terms of gameplay. They are mostly visual novels, so most of it is about the story and characters. I don't want to just recap each game's story, but I will be talking about the important beats and giving my opinion on how they are handled. Most of these games are also very short, which is a big reason why I'm talking about them all in one video. Most of the gameplay here involves walking around the church and doing basic things like lighting candles and checking to make sure everyone has the flowers they're supposed to. There are a couple instances where you can get a game over, but they're kind of awkward because instead of there being a short cutscene showing how you failed, it immediately cuts to a game over. It's a little jarring. The part where you have to light the candles takes way too long. You can only walk when people are praying, and they only pray for such a short amount of time. It really isn't that long, but it's a slog. Forces is easily the highlight of the whole experience. He has this kind of a dick, but is still likable energy to him. He breaks the fourth wall a couple times in a few charming ways. The game has two endings. Which one you get depends on if you listen to Forces and help other people or not. I'm a little confused on a bit of the details, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but what I'm pretty sure the ending reveals is that the entire funeral was fake to see if Angelica was actually in control of her body or if it was the pastor's wife. Apparently, a ritual was done to Angelica so that the wife could possess her. Angelica and the wife are both in the body fighting for control, and the wife is actually a fallen angel. Fallen angels need a vessel when they are on Earth so they possess humans. A fallen angel possessed the pastor's wife, and then the pastor's wife's body died, and that's when the fallen angel possessed Angelica. I think that's correct. It's a little confusing. If you don't listen to Vorsis and help people, the cultists will think that you're not the pastor's wife and will do another ritual on Angelica, with Vorsis not being allowed to help because God said no, I guess. If you don't help anyone, the cultists will think you are the pastor's wife, and Vorsis will say that he will one day save Angelica from the possession, but until that day she has to persevere. Vorsis asks you not to help anyone to go along with the cultists. I think it's pretty funny that the reason given for why Vorsis can't immediately tell you what's going on is because apparently nowadays God likes things to be more ambiguous when he helps people so they can figure it out for themselves. So instead you just get these tiny clues. Both this game and the next game don't have original soundtracks. Instead they use licensed free music. If these games are ever remade or anything, it would be nice if they were given proper soundtracks. This game and every other game I'm going to talk about have an amazing art style. When it's just the gameplay, everything looks fine, nothing incredible, but nothing bad. But whenever the characters start talking to each other or there's a cutscene, man, I'm obsessed with this style. I love these character designs so much, and that goes for all of the games. This is probably going to be the most simple game I talk about. There just isn't really much to go over. So I didn't realize this until I basically already finished the video, but I didn't give my opinions on the game's story at all, which I feel like tells you everything you need to know about it. It's pretty uninteresting, and nothing about it is really noteworthy, even considering how confusing it is. Maybe saying it's uninteresting is a bit harsh. I guess it's fine. It's just kind of there. Two friends who haven't spoken to each other in a long time, Augustine and Winnie, are going on a drive when they suddenly get stuck in a snowstorm even though it's July. What gameplay there is in Coldfront is mostly walking around and interacting with objects as Augustine. There's a part where you run away from a monster that lasts about 10 seconds, and that's about it. Not that that's a bad thing, because the actual story is great. Augustine and Winnie have serious issues with their relationship. We learn right at the beginning of the game that they've been friends since elementary school and were inseparable for most of their childhood, but all of a sudden Winnie stopped talking to Augustine about a year ago. Augustine thinks that Winnie hates him and is embarrassed by him, so he projects that onto Winnie. Throughout the game, Augustine convinces himself Winnie hates him, and that makes him hate Winnie more and more. This all comes to a head when you are given the choice to push Winnie down some stairs. If you do push Winnie down the stairs, you get the bad ending. Augustine wakes back up in the car, and Winnie is next to him dead. A problem with Augustine and Winnie's relationship is that Winnie would do whatever Augustine did, but he would always end up better at it, which would make everyone like Winnie more. With Winnie dead in the bad ending, Augustine starts to be noticed by other people again, which makes him happy. It's pretty disturbing, but one of my complaints with the game is that for some reason during the bad ending, some of the text is partly cut off. I'm not sure how no one caught that. In the good ending, where you don't decide to commit murder, Winnie and Augustine have a mature adult conversation about their relationship, and it solves literally all of their problems. Who would have guessed? I love the scene where they reconcile and take accountability for the unintentional harm they've been causing each other. This is the only game I've looked at today that made me shed a tear. Not that any of the other games were really trying. Unfortunately, I do have to critique the scene a little bit because the music very clearly loops in the middle of it. It's very noticeable. The track stops for a couple seconds and then restarts. After they reconcile, it's revealed that they're both in a coma, that it was all just a dream ending, if you will. I don't have much of an issue with this. For one, it's pretty easy to figure out. The snow literally appeared out of nowhere when they were yelling at each other while driving the car. The monster is a combination of a bear and an elk. Augustine is represented by bears and Winnie elk. They met as kids during the winter and they stopped talking a year ago during the winter. I mean, at one point they see dead versions of themselves as kids holding hands, so it was either a coma or something really supernatural. The reason I don't mind that it was all a dream is because Winnie and Augustine shared the dream and went through everything together. I'm not really sure how that works, but you gotta suspend your disbelief a little bit. Even if what they went through wasn't technically real, it was real to them, and they remember everything and keep all of their development. And secondly, the game isn't about the day after tomorrow setting they find themselves in. That's more of a backdrop for exploring their relationship. I will say that it didn't have to be a coma. You could have had the apocalypse be real and still had them work through the problems with their friendship in the real apocalypse, but the coma thing works fine. Winnie directly explains that they're in a coma, which feels a bit awkward, but it's not too bad, and I do kind of like that they're self-aware about it. In the good ending, both Augustine and Winnie wake up in the car, and they both spend some time together before Winnie goes off to college. Augustine makes new friends while still being happy Winnie is in his life. It's insanely heartwarming and a much more satisfying conclusion than the bad ending. That's not to knock the bad ending, that's good for what it does. Even if simple and short, I think Coldfront tells a very compelling story about a fractured friendship and how important communication is in any relationship. That's such a simple thing, but it's surprising how much people forget that. This one is a bit different than the ones we've talked about previously. Starting with Elevator Hitch, everything going forward will have an original soundtrack, and they're all great. Most of the OST here sounds like elevator music, which is fitting, but not something I would listen to on my own time. But I do really like the song that plays on Floor 9, and even if I don't care about most of the soundtrack, that's not a knock against it, since it works for what it's going for. Another reason this one is different than the ones we've talked about previously is because there isn't really a focus on the story. Everything is really nonsensical with no explanation, but it works here. We don't know the main character's name because every time he tries to say it, he gets cut off. There's a coworker you are with the whole game, but every time he says his name, it's different. These two dudes get stuck in an elevator inside of an unnamed company building, and they have to figure out how to get out. Or really, I should say the protagonist has to figure out how to get out. The coworker does nothing helpful the entire time. Unlike every other game I'm going to talk about today, there's no moving around and examining objects. Here it really only is pointing and clicking. You go in between floors solving puzzles until you can eventually make your way out of the elevator. For example, there's a hole on floor 2 that you need to put something alive into. You can find a rat in the elevator vent by unscrewing the vent with a screwdriver, and you find the screwdriver on floor 7. You get the idea. All of the solutions feel well thought out and none of them feel unfair. I did get stuck a few times, but that was mainly me being stupid. The game has 15 different endings, though really only one actual one. All of the other endings involve dying by getting a game over, or you killing your coworker or something like that. However, dying is part of the story, as the protagonist will remember each time you get a game over. The reason the protagonist was in the office building in the first place was for a job interview. After solving all the puzzles, you'll end up on floor 9 where you'll talk to the interviewer. If you do stuff like mention how useless your coworker was, the interviewer will say how it's wrong for you to slander your higher-ups. If you answer enough of the interview questions correctly, the protagonist will be able to return to the lobby. The coworker will leave on the 9th floor where he disappears. The protagonist tries to leave the building before bumping into this random dude who tells him that he is useless if he doesn't work and that people would kill to be in his position. He needs the job. The protagonist defeatedly agrees, and the exit door opens up to reveal it was the elevator. The game's main theme is definitely something relating to toxic work culture, how you shouldn't complain about your job and you should just shut up and be happy you have it. At one point, the protagonist screws some other people over, and the coworker comments on how he's perfect for the company with how cutthroat that was. Floor 4 seems to be a recreation of the protagonist's childhood room. You can get a game over here if you make too much noise. The parents show up and the elevator door closes. The protagonist also looks uneasy if you examine the cross. It could be speculated the protagonist doesn't have a very good relationship with his family and he has some religious trauma. Maybe part of the reason he needs a job is because he doesn't want to live with his family again. Or maybe he doesn't want to be homeless. That's also an option. If you manage to get every ending, which involves getting every game over, a fire exit will appear inside the elevator. The screen will go black and audio of running will loop forever. No escape from capitalism. I don't have many issues with elevator Hitch. There was one time where I was examining the no smoking sign in the elevator and then all of the buttons stopped working and I had to close out the game. Besides that, everything was pretty smooth and solving the puzzles is enjoyable. I greatly enjoy the game's main theme as well. If I had to nitpick, the elevator only has 7 buttons even though there's 9 floors. Add more buttons. The only thing I knew about this game before going in was that there was some gay element and there was cannibalism. This game was not at all what I thought it was going to be based off of those 2 identifiers. I saw a bunch of gay art of the main characters and it really made me think this game was going to be something very different. Unlike a lot of the other games we were talking about today, Deadplate has gameplay that isn't just point and click. It has gameplay you would find in a non-visual novel. You play as a waiter named Rhodey, and you deliver everyone their food as fast as you can. You can only have so much time to do this before the customer gets annoyed and leave. You have to make a certain amount of money in order to progress to future workdays. The gameplay loop is pretty fun, but I think it would have worked a lot better if there was controller support. Days 6 and 7 were a lot for me. I felt the same way I did when I played Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. That's a weird example, but in that game the bros attacks involve 4 different buttons at once, and some of them are way too much for my brain to handle. I felt very similarly here. It's very hectic, and it would have been a lot easier and less frustrating if I could have used a controller. I did get better at the controls over time, but I still think it's a bit of an issue. At times, the game felt very unresponsive, and sometimes I think the game would glitch, and I would lose for no fault of my own. When somebody is done eating, they go up to the counter, and you collect the money from them, but a couple of times, a customer would get up but wouldn't go to the counter. They would stand next to the table, and I wouldn't be able to interact with them, and they would get annoyed I didn't take their money and leave. I don't know if I'm simply stupid and there was something I was supposed to do but didn't, but I tried doing stuff and nothing worked. It also only happened twice, so I don't think it was a mechanic. Despite these issues, I'm still overall positive on the gameplay. Iron those problems out and I think the game would be almost perfect because the story is phenomenal. When everything is working as it should, the gameplay does shine. Between shifts at work, you can walk around Rhodey's apartment and there's a catalog where you can buy items to give you advantages during your shifts. The only thing I ever used was the roller skates to make me go faster and the cologne to make the customers more patient, but more options is always a plus. The reason Rhodey got a job was to do something nice for his girlfriend Manon, but by interacting with the rotary phone in the apartment, Rhodey will try calling her and she never answers, so it's clear something's up. If you complete all 7 days working at the restaurant, Rhodey will quit and call Manon once again trying to invite her to dinner, but she never picks up. Rhodey reveals Manon had asked to take a break and he wanted to apologize for something. The scene is really sad and you feel terrible for Rhodey, but I have to say my first reaction when I found out he had a girlfriend was, what about the yaoi? I have my priorities. If you do a couple different things during work, like talking to the head chef Vincent about specific topics, or investigating the trash can in Vincent's office, where you will find a picture of him with a girl along with some love letters, you'll get a phone call at the apartment at the end of day 6. Doing all the things to get this phone call isn't too bad. I did most of them my initial playthrough, but for how integral the phone call is to the story, I feel like maybe it should be a little easier to discover it, because I don't think I ever would have found it if I didn't look it up. You have to talk to Vincent during work in order to get the phone call, but I didn't think I would be able to do that because of the whole time management thing. Time doesn't pass during the conversation with Vincent, but I didn't know that. I also tried to interact with the trash can in his office, but for some reason the game didn't accept my input, so I thought it was non-interactable. Regardless, by answering the phone, Vincent will invite Rhodey to a dinner party. If you accept, you go to Vincent's apartment, and you are roped into serving food to his friends. Here we find out the girl in the photo from the trash can was Manon, who Vincent had been seeing for the past week. By snooping around Vincent's room, you'll find the freezer key for the restaurant, and if you look out the window, you'll see a mysterious figure watching you. If you look out the window again, it'll be gone. The party ends very early because of some situation Vincent doesn't disclose. On day 7, you can now enter the freezer, and by doing so, Rhodey will discover Manon's locket. Vincent knocks out Rhodey and ties him up. If you don't equip the matches, you will die here. That's not much of an issue because it's pretty easy to figure out you need the matches for this. You can buy the matches from the catalog in the apartment, and they're the only item that doesn't have a use for gameplay. Rhodey escapes the freezer, and Vincent bites his ear off and eats it. In one of the conversations you can have with Vincent during work, you find out that he doesn't have the ability to taste. He can't stand eating. Vincent isn't a cannibal, or at least he wasn't until he bit your ear off. Vincent killed and cooked Manon for Rhodey after realizing how much Rhodey loved her, which during the phone call ending, Rhodey does actually eat Manon unknowingly. Vincent felt nothing for Manon. The reason Vincent has barely had any staff has nothing to do with the cannibalism, and the food he serves at the restaurant isn't people either. I really appreciate this story detail. If Vincent had been a stereotypical cannibal, that's a weird sentence, that would have been fine, but actually what he is far more interesting. He wanted to eat Rhodey, hopefully to be able to taste something. A very messed up take on the phrase cooking with love. Rhodey had complained throughout the game that he didn't like Vince's cooking because it felt like he only cooked for himself. It's never outright stated, but it's definitely implied that Vincent has some romantic feelings for Rhodey. There's the fact that he cooked Manon for Rhodey, he stopped correcting Rhodey whenever he wouldn't address him by his proper title, he scribbles out bad reviews in the newspaper when it mentions not liking Rhodey, and this entire scene. There's probably other examples, but you get the point. He loves Rhodey in a very fucked up way. During this ending, Vincent chases you around the restaurant, and what you're supposed to do is go into his office and grab a broken wine bottle, which you use to stab him in the neck. When I was playing this, though, I got stuck at this part in the kitchen. Eventually, Vincent moved backwards for no reason, so I was able to get out, but I was stuck there for a solid 90 seconds. Anyway, Rhodey burns down the restaurant with Vincent inside it, and he dies. After the credits, we get a flashback with Manon, which is the only time we properly get to see her. Before the flashback, we only knew things Vincent and Rhodey had mentioned about her. We learned that the reason she wanted to take a break with Rhodey was because Rhodey focused on her so much that he didn't take care of himself. She does end the interaction by saying she still loves Rhodey and that she will see him around. This makes it pretty clear that Manon really did only see Vincent as a rebound, and a lot of the things Vincent said about Manon wasn't true. He tells Rhodey Manon never loved him, and during the dinner party says Manon told him that she recently dumped a pathetic redhead, but during the final confrontation, Vincent says that Manon never brought up Rhodey. It feels like Vincent was jealous of how Rhodey felt towards Manon. There are a few things about the story I'm still confused about. What was with the mysterious shadow figure outside of Vincent's window? It resembles Manon, but it wouldn't really make sense for it to be her, unless it was her ghost or something. I didn't mention it earlier because it wasn't relevant to what I was talking about, but on the later days, Rhodey will start to have nightmares about being eaten, and on the last day, a nightmare about specifically being eaten by Vincent. The music that plays during the nightmare sequences are Manon's themes slowed down and reversed, which could imply that it's Manon's ghost trying to warn Rhodey about Vincent. That would check out, but the thing I have genuinely no clue about is why the dinner party needed to be ended early. What was the emergency for why Vincent's friends had to leave? I have nothing for that. Deadplay is overall a great experience. The story gets a chef's kiss, you see what I did there, and the gameplay is really fun, even if I feel like it could be optimized a bit better. If a few of the kinks were worked out, I think this would be a perfect game. The soundtrack for this game is awesome, by the way, especially during the parts where you're working as the waiter. The worst part about getting into this game so late is that there is all this cool merch, and you can't get it anymore. I want a Rhodey plush, and I want the art book, but they're all gone. Please restock them. I will cook someone. I don't care. Just restock them. This is probably the most negative I'm going to be the whole video. I didn't really like this one. The pieces are all there, but they don't really fit for me. We're back to the very basic walking around and talking to people while examining objects, which is fine. The main issue I have with this game is the story, or I guess specifically the conclusion. I don't find it very satisfying, but we'll get there. You play as Baksu, who goes to the wedding of her friend Daejong, who she hasn't seen in a while. Everything is pretty normal as you walk around the wedding venue, until you ask the very nice groom if you can meet with him privately. Then out of nowhere, nowhere, Baksu kills him and hides the body. So we're playing as the psychopath this time. Very nice. We find out that both girls went to medical school together, and Daejong accidentally killed a patient in a way that was extremely avoidable if she had just been paying attention. She told everyone it was Baksu's fault, and she is kinda pissed off. Baksu spreads some rumors around the venue that the groom had cheated, and she sets it up so it looks like Daejong killed the groom. Daejong gets blamed for a murder she didn't commit by the person she did the exact same thing to. It ends with the cops arriving and Baksu asking Daejong if she atones while psychotically smiling before her expression changes to something a bit more disturbed. I like how why her expression changes is left open to interpretation. There's a lot of reasons it could be. She could have realized she's a monster just like Daejong was. Maybe she regrets killing the groom. Or maybe she's pissed that Daejong still never apologized. Who knows? I've been racking my brain a lot as how to best explain why I don't like this ending because I'm not even 100% sure I understand why I don't like it. This is the only game that doesn't have multiple endings, although Elevator Hitch only really has one true ending. Married in Red has game overs where you can get arrested or die, but those don't really count as endings. To me, this feels like a bad ending, and then there's no good ending. Things don't really feel concluded by the end of it. Daejong is framed for the murder, but we still don't know how that's gonna go. Daejong knows what really happened, and it's possible she could convince other people. When Baksu was spreading rumors about the affair, she said that she heard it from the groomsmen. All it would take is somebody to ask the groomsmen about that for Baksu's plan to start crumbling a little bit. To be fair, Baksu did overhear the groomsmen talking about how the groom did meet up with someone, but they did say that he did not cheat, and it would be hella suspicious if people found out Baksu was spreading rumors like that. The last time the groom was seen alive was with Baksu. She asked him if she could speak to him in a private room, and she did that in a room with a handful of other people in it. It's not this grand perfect revenge because the whole point is for Daejong to get blamed for a murder she didn't commit, but I'm not convinced that's the case with all these holes in the plan. It being her husband, I'm sure, was just a cherry on top for Baksu. I also don't feel satisfied with Baksu getting away with it. She's a monster, and I do understand that's the point. She's doing to her friend what she did to her, although the difference is that her friend accidentally killed somebody while she did it on purpose. Daejong is definitely awful for blaming what happened on Baksu, and she should be held accountable for her negligence, but Baksu is definitely worse. I guess I would have liked it a lot more if Baksu faced consequences for her actions, like maybe at the end both of the girls get arrested or they both die or something. I don't know, but as it is, honestly I find the game overs where Baksu immediately gets arrested or dies a lot more satisfying than the actual ending. An ending doesn't have to be happy for me to like it. I like Elevator Hitch, and that doesn't have a happy ending. The ending of that game serves the theme, and I suppose Married in Red's ending serves its theme as well, but I don't know. I admit this one is likely on me as to why I don't really like the ending, but I can't help but feel a resounding "that's it" to the ending. If Baksu had had this perfect revenge, I would have felt satisfied with that. Or if she had realized she was becoming a monster and then faced consequences for killing the groom, I also would have felt satisfied with that. But as is, it feels like the worst of both worlds. This game is pretty short, and because it's mostly about the story, and I don't like the ending of the story, I don't really like the game in general. If there were multiple endings, perhaps I would have found one of those better. The music and visuals are still good as always, though. Something I found very awkward was that when you speak to a character that doesn't have a name, NPC shows up as their name tag. It's so awkward. Just don't give them a name tag. It takes me out of it. Also, this is a nitpick, but the title is Married in Red, but there's no marriage. Everyone is at a wedding, but the actual wedding never happens. So yeah, I was pretty disappointed with this one. Man, we're going 2 for 2 for disappointments. I enjoyed this a lot until the ending. June and her friends go to an island resort for a vacation. It's immediately clear something is wrong when some of the guests start acting weird, like throwing up chunks of metal and talking about how some she wants to take back what's rightfully hers. We never find out who this she is, but if I had to guess it would be Mother Nature or a sea god, possibly even the ocean itself. Most of June's friends start acting out of character, being very aggressive and eating and drinking non-stop. They also start talking about whoever she is, and everyone at the resort seems to be infected except for June and her friend Ryan. They come up with a plan to try and get off the island and call for help, but a little beforehand Ryan seemingly gets infected off screen and everyone on the island starts walking into the ocean, a lot of them holding anchors and chains. June dives into the water for Ryan, and you can either choose to go back to shore or follow him. If you follow him, June presumably drowns, and if you go back to shore, then you go back to shore. That's it. That's how it ends. It's nothing. There's no ending. Nothing is explained in the slightest. Nothing is explained in Elevator Hitch either, but nothing in that game is supposed to be explained. The theme of Rotten Paradise has to do with toxic relationships, or I guess more specifically, friends changing. In a bad way, obviously. People in your life changing and treating you badly and ignoring you. This is illustrated very clearly with June and Ryan's last conversation. June choosing to either go with Ryan to drown, I take as a metaphor for choosing to possibly drag yourself down with somebody you care about. The whole if you saw your friend jump off a bridge would you type thing. The theme of this game is really good, but the issue is that it feels like it's building up to some grand conclusion and it doesn't deliver at all. Who was the random person that grabbed June's arm at the beginning of the game? How did everyone get infected? Why was June and Ryan the only ones not to get infected? What was with the lady choking up on the metal? One of June's friends seems to briefly snap out of the infection after he hits her, so is it possible you could break the infection? Not everything needs to be explained 100%. You can leave some things ambiguous, and I understand the metaphor, but you can do a metaphor and tell a complete story at the same time. Married in Red at least had an ending. I didn't think it was a good ending, but it had one. The ending of this game is literally nothing. It's all build up with no payoff. It really sucks because, like I said, I was really enjoying it until the ending. I enjoyed the location a lot. Tropical and resort settings are always fun, and I'm a sucker for storms, so I love the atmosphere once it starts pouring. The gameplay is mostly walking around talking to people, so not much to note there. They do a good job at the beginning of the game showing June's relationship with all her friends, which makes it hurt a lot when they start to change and be dicks to her. You feel bad for June as she loses her friends. I like the theme of the game a lot, but the lack of explanation on literally any of the plot points and lack of a real ending kind of ruins it. This one hurts because it had so much potential. If it did stick the landing, I would have thought of this game very highly. Now then, let's move on to the final game and the reason this video exists. We're finally here. The reason I made this video, I found all these other games and Studio Investigrave in the first place. I absolutely love Jackpot Crash Course. I started playing it while I was on vacation, and I had to stop myself a little into it because I knew if I continued, I was going to become obsessed with it, and it was all I was going to think about the entire vacation. I played it when I got back, and I was absolutely right about becoming obsessed with it. This is by far the biggest and longest of all the games. It takes around 4 hours, plus there's multiple different routes and things to do. Jackpot isn't complete yet either. It's being released in chapters, and this is only chapter 1 of 3, so it's gonna be even longer. The basic premise is a bunch of criminals sign up to be on a reality TV show where if they win, they are fully pardoned of their crimes. However, they will have to survive casino-themed games where if they lose, they die. You play as Eddie as he gets accustomed to things, and you can join one of 3 groups. You can either investigate, collect medicine, or rob a child. Depending on what group you join, who dies at the end of the chapter could be different. The biggest thing I have to commend about this game is the characters. All of them are so much fun, and they're all important. I like some more than others, but they all serve their roles, and they're all great. Character designs have always been something that this studio has been awesome at, but it's at its best here. I will say that I think the story is at its most impactful if you go with Sailor's group to get the medicine. That's the group I went with when I first played the game. If you go with Sailor's group, Sailor and Sandbag, who is the guy that you get the medicine for, will be the ones who die. Whenever you gain a character's trust in the game, you get their character card, and when you're forced to let them die, you watch as their trust card rips in front of you. It's incredibly painful, and I was not okay. Sailor and Sandbag also die if you join the investigation group. Their deaths still hurt, but they're not as impactful because you didn't get to know them as much. If you join the clearly evil group with a million red flags, Sailor actually gets to live in that route. Sandbag still dies, but in a different way. Instead of Sailor, Vega from the investigation group dies. Chapter 2 will probably be decently different depending on which group you join. An attention to detail that I appreciate a ton is that no matter what group Eddie joins, the other groups will still do what they would have done if you had joined them. If you join Vega's group, you will hear about Sailor being robbed. If you join the villain group, then you will be the one robbing Sailor. And if you join Sailor's group, you get robbed. I guess robbed isn't really the right word. At least put it more as extortion. Although, I don't know if that's entirely accurate either. Doesn't really matter, you get the point. You get different information in every route, and every route is unique, and it feels like it's worth doing. There is a ton of different things you can do, and a lot of them I didn't know about until I went online or I replayed. During the latter hours of the game, you have a free period where you can interact with all the characters to spend time with them and help them with their problems, but you can also do other things, like play carnival games or do an entire bartending minigame. If you have enough casino chips, you can go into the VIP section and learn about the crimes a lot of the characters did to wind up on the show. All the characters are so much fun that I wish I could talk to all of them during the free free period, but you can really only do 3. I cannot express enough how enjoyable the characters are. It's a great thing they are so good because there's very little actual gameplay and it's mostly reading their dialogue, so the dialogue had to be great, and it is. Oh, and the music, it's phenomenal. Absolutely takes the cake as the best in any of the games. My favorite are Roulette, Bet and Forgive, and Choosing Group, but really everything is fantastic. I do have some negatives to go over, but before I do that, just look at Benny. He's his own entire positive. I love him. There better be an ending where him and Eddie live and they get married and they have sex at least 10 times a day, every day. If there isn't, I will cry. So yeah, negatives. Most of these aren't that big of a deal, but there are absolutely some rough edges. During Blackjack, all of the characters have what is essentially a noose with spikes around their neck, including Eddie, but his isn't shown when walking around. There's no chain or nothing around his neck, even though there's supposed to be. I made my friend play this game, and he went with Vega's group. Even though Sailor and Sandbag die the same way in both the Sailor and Vega route, the dialogue is different. But for some reason, the dialogue from the Sailor route started playing in the Vega route. It was incredibly bizarre. In the Sailor route, Eddie is forced to lie to Sailor and Sandbag that he has a plan. When they find out Eddie is lying, they go off on him. In the Vega route, that doesn't happen with Eddie, so Sailor and Sandbag simply react accordingly to how they are about to be murdered. When my friend got to this part, Sailor and Sandbag were pissed at Eddie about lying to them about having a plan, even though he never said that. It was so weird. Quick side note, but I don't blame Eddie for lying in the Sailor route. It sucks and it hurts, but considering the situation they were in, and there was a decent chance they would have all died anyway, and they would all die in the future still, I don't think it was really worth getting mad at Eddie over it. Although I don't really blame Sailor and Sandbag about being pissed about it. I'm sure Eddie is going to be traumatized in Chapter 2 about it. Back to issues. You can get a water bottle item and part of the description for it is cut off, and there are a few instances where music will stop and then loop again. I don't think that should be an issue. Seamlessly looping music feels like it should be a given. It happened in Coldfront 2, but I didn't like it there either, and it only happened once in that game. During the intro where you play roulette, there's a devil head with a gun in its mouth. Benny says that the gun showed up after they put on the cuffs, even though you can clearly see the gun was there before they put the cuffs on. There is a character who only communicates through fans, and at one point one of the fans is supposed to say fit, but it says fine instead. I also got that same character's trust card at some point, but when I went to look at it in my inventory, the game kept telling me I didn't have it, even though I could clearly see it in there. Before Blackjack, you have to pick a card, and the dealer will do this thing where he shuffles them, but sometimes the dealer will shuffle the cards like 4 times. Really quickly, one issue I forgot is that during free period you can help the character Rook by getting a variety of different items from the shop. What item you get is random. Most of the items she will say you can keep, but if you get the chessboard, you'll give it to her. However, the chessboard will still be in your inventory even though she's supposedly supposed to have it. That's about it for negatives. I don't think most of these are that big of a deal besides the wrong dialogue issue with the ending, but I've only ever seen that happen with my friends, so it could be a rare thing. The characters card thing could also be an issue, depending on if it still doesn't work with Chapter 2. It doesn't really matter now, though, because you don't use the character cards for much in this first chapter. Either way, I hope that one day all of these issues can be fixed, because despite these rough edges, the game is something special. I am incredibly hooked, and I cannot wait to see future chapters. There's so many mysteries and so many characters to explore. You do not understand how mad I am that I missed a chance to get to Eddie and Benny plushies. You can even get to chain them together like at the beginning of the game. They better restock these or I will lose it. Restock the Dead Plate stuff while you're at it too. Ooh, and the Protag plush. I want that. Ooh, and make an Augustine plush. Take all of my money. I have more Poppy Playtime plushies than any sane person should have. I will buy these if you restock them. Just do it. That does it for all the games. A pretty solid lineup, especially considering I'm pretty sure this studio is only made up of like 3 people. Before I wrap up, I thought it would be fun to rank all the games. In last place is Married in Red, which you could probably tell because it's behind me right now. Even though I was more disappointed with Rotten Paradise, I feel more towards that game, whereas this one I don't really connect with it at all. There could be an argument that could be made that Rotten Paradise should be in last because I saw potential in it and it failed to deliver that potential, but this is my list, so fuck you. 5. Eloquent Countenance, which I'm now realizing I never said the name of during its review. There's nothing horrible about the game, but not much is great about it either, besides the silly sexy angel man. 4, Rotten Paradise. Great up until the ending. I thought about putting Eloquent Countenance above this one, but while I wasn't disappointed with that game, I did have more fun with Rotten Paradise overall. I'm realizing that all of the games with female protagonists are at the bottom of the list. I swear this has nothing to do with me being very gay. This is pure coincidence. I'll have you know that I have plenty of straight friends. Isn't that right, Jack?
Yeah? Can I please go now?
No, go figure out how to make me a sandwich.
Ugh.
All of the following games I think very highly of. I went back and forth a lot for whether I liked Coldfront or Elevator Hitch more. Elevator Hitch is more fun to play, and I do like its theme, but Coldfront's snowstorm apocalypse atmosphere appeals to me a lot, and I love the narrative between Winnie and Augustine. I guess I would say Coldfront would be 4th and Elevator Hitch would be 3rd because the gameplay is more fun in Elevator Hitch, but really I think it could go either way. My second favorite is Deadplay, but I could easily understand it being someone's favorite. Fun gameplay, even if it can be a tad annoying sometimes, and a great story. Not much of a surprise, but first is Jackpot Crash Course. Everything about it appeals to me, from the casino aesthetic to the death games to the wacky characters. For the last part of this video, I'm gonna go back to my outfit from the beginning, even though it has one expression, just ignore it. Even if a big part of these games is the story, and I did spoil the story for you, if these games interest you, I would still say they're worth playing. Someone talking about the story and actually experiencing it for yourself are very different things. All of these games are free, and they're pretty short, so you got nothing to lose. I look forward to seeing whatever studio Investigrave makes next. I have been your Ghost with the Most, and your fabulous host, Luke here, and thank you for watching. Okay, so I needed to throw this in somewhere because I keep thinking about it, but no one is going to care, so I'm putting it in at the end. For some reason, when I picture the ending of Jackpot Crash Course, I'm picturing it as the ending of Ninjago Season 6 Skybound, and no one is going to care about that, and only Ninjago fans are going to get it. It doesn't even fit Jackpot Crash Course because nothing about that game is, like, magical, but I don't care, I'm doing it anyway. Spoilers for Ninjago Skybound. So, like, Eddie and Benny have the whole, like, yaoi thing going on, so they would be the final contestants, and they're both trying to find a way out of the game so they can both live. But during the final game, Benny gets shot and starts to die in Eddie's arms. Eddie's like, Benny, the bullet hit you! And Benny says, you have to go. You're the only one who can win. No, not if that means losing you. And then Benny lets out a weak smile and rubs Eddie's cheek. I never wanted to hitch. I never wanted to get hitched anyway. No, Benny, don't say that. Guess it's true. The greatest love stories always do end in tragedy. I'm not really sure who Nauticon would be in this scenario. I guess Cupid, although that doesn't really fit exactly. It doesn't matter anyway. So Eddie was like, Benny dies in Eddie's arm. A tear rolls down Eddie's face, landing on the body. The crowd watches in silence. Cupid starts to approach Eddie from behind. And then Eddie, he makes his last wish, because there are wishes in this version, right? Eddie goes, I wish we had met before, and nobody started this show in the first place. Sailor's pocket watch falls out of Cupid's pocket because he has it for some reason, and the hands start to turn backward. Eddie watches the last few days quickly fly behind him in a second until it all ends the day before he got arrested. He's on the sidewalk, close by his apartment. He looks around confused until he notices Benny crossing the street also doing the same thing. Isn't that convenient? And then Benny notices Eddie and they start running towards each other. Benny takes Eddie's hand, pulling him in for a kiss. Benny's like, I remember it all. I do too, Benny, but how? Who cares? Eddie and Benny hug. A few feet away are all their former competitors. Poppy goes, gross. Sure would be a shame for a car to come hit them. Kissing in the middle of the street is highly irresponsible. They should be thankful no one's on the road. That's Vega. He has the nerd voice. And then Sailor's like all cute, so he'd be like, I'm getting the strangest feeling of deja vu. Have we all met each other before? Bones would be like, ugh, this is so gay. Why the hell are we all standing here? The group would disband, confused and annoyed, while Eddie and Benny continue to hug as the camera pans out. The end. God, I'm so fucking talented.